startling number, this spike in the murders of African Americans. FBI data showing a 32% increase from 2019 to 2020 and a 43% surge in 2020 compared to the previous decade. All this when the defund movement took off. Fox News Digital reaching out to BLM about the numbers last week, not yet receiving a response. We will, however, get one now from Hawk Newsome, co-founder of BLM of Greater New York. Hawk, nice to see you. Nice to meet you in person. Couple things to go over. That defund question in a second here, but listen to the mayor, Eric Adams, who said this just this past week also.
Where are all those who stated Black Lives Matter? If Black Lives Matters, then the thousands of people I saw on the street when Floyd was murdered should be on the street right now stating that the lives of these Black children that are dying every night matters. We can't be hypocrites.
The subject is African Americans. I would also argue white lives matter too. Everybody's life matters here. What the mayor contends, though, is that the same reaction is not given. What would you say to him?
It was smooth the way you threw white lives matter in there. Our problem is when Black lives are oppressed and don't receive justice, nobody cares. Nothing happens. Something happens to a white person, the world moves, right? So let's get back to Eric Adams. This mayor who is a Democrat, but he spews conservative and Republican talking points. At the end of the day, we have a name for someone like this, and this is someone we call a coon, right? Because he's a black man, and he's a white man in blackface, and a very conservative-minded white man at that. So what we have is a man with hundreds of people on the city's payroll, billions of dollars in budget, and 40,000 police officers. He has 10 victims in one night. The night before, he had 16 shooting victims on a train. And they say, what are you going to do about policing? And he says, what about BLM? Is America not smart enough to see him deflecting? Like,
well, that might be the case. I didn't see the entirety of the interview, but there's a ton of topics discussed with him. He was with us last week, and what he told Dane and me is that we'll continue to take guns off the street, whether it's white, black, or whatever the category you want to put it in, and that dangerous people will not be a part of the revolving door system, the legal system in New York. To that, you would say.
Now, here's the thing, man. You're smarter than this. Don't listen to what Eric Adams says. He gives great press statements. He's the master of the press conference. Some kid dies, he hugs their mother, he's holding up sneakers, he's crying. But what we elected him for, the city of New York, was to keep the city safe. This city is a war zone, and he can't stop it. So with all his power, he turns to BLM and says, what are you going to do? Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to organize people in our communities to go out and preach a message of love and unification in the streets. We're going to take control of our cities because the government has failed us for decades. Even when crime is low, we're still dying. And we have to fix this problem ourselves because we believe that poverty is the mother of crime. And until we fix that, there'll never be a decrease in crime. So we're going to help our people while we build them up and empower them ourselves. All
right. So here's some things he says he has done. Call for number 2. He says they've increased the number of plainclothes officers, funding, police presence. But you think that none of this is actually having the effect of making the city safe?
See, we like numbers as intelligent people, as we sit at this table.
I asked him, when are we going to see results?
See, and the problem is, in 4 months, his new unit has arrested 126 people as of last week. Only 30 had weapons. The rest were petty charges that the DAs gave violations out. His new strategic policing model is a monumental failure. When they were calling me a terrorist, because I told people if these cops kill someone, there's going to be riots and bloodshed. When I told people that, they called me a terrorist. But what I was saying was, this man has no plan.
Hawk, 2 things on this. I know how much you care about this.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Don't just listen to his words, watch his actions.
It's data.
Back to the issue that we introduced you with. Did the defund movement actually hurt the African-American community in America?
Now, it's really interesting that you say that, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to explain to you what defund means. Defunding the police simply means taking money from the police, putting it in community centers, job opportunities, and after-school programs, which this mayor has cut. right? So it wasn't like just get rid of this money for the police. It was invest in the community, because when you invest in the community, crime
I get
drops.
that, but
it drops.
I got you. Just back to the point that these are FBI numbers now.
Yeah.
And the FBI is saying the African American community suffered more when the defund movement took off.
See, that's great. But tell me what the FBI says about cities that didn't defund and their murder rate increasing, because crime is up everywhere. Not just in places where they defunded. So you explain that to me.
I'm just suggesting that maybe the cops are good for the community to help keep them safe. Why don't you buy that argument?
Here's the problem. Because the cops are not the answer. Poor people commit crimes out of desperation. Address the poverty. The Republicans don't care. But they'll say, we'll teach you. They'll say, we'll teach you to empower yourselves. Democrats want to keep us handicapped and crippled and on welfare, right? But instead of giving us the answer to our problems, is there a reason why high school students in the South Bronx drop out at a 60% rate? Our schools are failing. You want to end crime? Give the kids programs. And for God's sake, I just want to get this little housing tidbit in. Our governor, Hochul, took money away from NYCHA, public housing, and gave that money to the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
Right? Her husband owns the concessions at the stadium.
Can I ask you one other thing about money?
That?
Because this is on Patricia
It's
Culler's
BLM. It's exhausting.
The mansion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's listen to her, and I want to get your take on it. You called it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here she is.
It's such a trip now to hear the word, the term 990s. I'm like, ugh, it's like triggering. It doesn't seem safe for us, this 990 structure, this nonprofit system structure. This is like deeply unsafe. Like, this is being literally weaponized against us. They know what they're doing, like how to create the infighting, how to create the distrust. We have to stop it.
Last question here. The $6 million spent on the mansion. Nobody was allowed in the mansion. The questionable fundraising. What do you think about all that?
I mean, this is exhausting. You have to be able to separate the people who started the movement from the people who carried the movement. Great things have come out of Black Lives Matter. We've had more black corporate hires than in the history of this country. We've passed progressive laws. The cops that killed George Floyd wouldn't have been prosecuted. So many of these cops, so many measures for accountability have came as a result of that. I don't want to talk about them anymore.
They paid for a house twice.
I get it. No, dude, trust me. I live in the South Bronx.
Where's the money going?
Our money? I can talk to you about Black Lives Matter New York. We have a beautiful Montessori school in the Bronx that no press will cover. People say that Black Lives Matter has been silent on murders. I call the news every time we give out toys, every time we do peace walks, every time we give out turkeys, every time we do something wholesome and uplifting, like Juneteenth festivals in the community. The news doesn't come to cover it.
We'll give our word that we'll come and see this.
That's right. You're going to come Juneteenth. You're going to hang out in the Bronx.
You come back here.
Just don't wear like a dashiki like Pelosi in them.
Don't worry.
You can give me fashion advice before I so much for the tip. We appreciate it.
All right.